All right, let's stay with us now and speak to Dr. Sthembiso Bhengu, Hani Institute Director. Dr. Bhengu, thank you so much for your time this afternoon. 31 years on, please share your reflections with us on the legacy of the late Hani.
Good evening to you. Good evening to your viewers. I think the most important legacy of Hani obviously was his commitment to the struggle for freedom. But also his commitment to simple basic things that what freedom meant for him: housing for the people, availability of water, availability of housing, availability of healthcare. And these were dealing with poverty, dealing with hunger. These were at the forefront of what we can call basic minimum of the things that what freedom meant.
And those are sentiments that are also echoed by former Gauteng Premier Mbazima Shilowa, who also talks about that Triple H campaign, the health, hunger and housing. But also then you listen to what the Deputy President of the country, Paul Mashatile, says yesterday. He says that over the past few decades, government has taken significant steps to address historical injustices and strive towards achieving social cohesion and socio-economic empowerment for all his, its citizens. But how much progress, in your view, when you assess, has been made, especially when you juxtapose it against that Triple H campaign of health, hunger and housing?
It is true that there has been strides that have been taken by the democratic government since 1994, but it is also equally true that a significant number of South Africans have not necessarily benefited from the kind of benefits that are supposedly, and so it's a story of both that in the overall framework. Definitely, we can say that the government of the ANC over the 30 years has created the framework, but equally that being said, I think particularly the influence of neoliberal policies and the impact of hollowing and the issue of hollowing of the state, corruption being part of it, has essentially almost undermined those very same principles, and in which you have the massive numbers of South Africans, obviously, who don't have housing, who are hungry, and of which the latest figures obviously are continuing to show growth in areas of poverty and inequality in South Africa.
And what becomes the risks, would you say, that South Africa faces as these divides continue?
So listen to this again.
What would you say are some of the risks that South Africa faces as it looks ahead if these divides, continue to be laid bare?
I think probably the most important, for me, the biggest worry is that our levels of inequality and create always a risk that will make almost what we saw in July 2021 probably look very minimal. I do not think that the poor are going to continually remain poor and be happy about being poor, especially when those who are affluent continue to flaunt and show the levels of affluency and the inability of the state to essentially manage these contradictions. And so unless the new administration is really able to make some strides in reducing levels of inequality, but primarily reducing the levels of hunger that people have. We remember the French Revolution when Queen Antoinette mistakenly said, "Give them cake." And that is the very basis of what essentially was the overthrow of the entire system. And so if we are not able to deal with inequality and hunger and poverty, my biggest worry is that the entire democratic system will be undermined.
Ms. Hani earlier on in her address says that, in her view, there is no political will to deal with some of these challenges. Do you agree with her, or do you think there is?
I think there is differences. Certainly, because of, I think there is a way in which we can agree that the political will, especially because of our overarching macroeconomic framework that we have followed almost since 1996, And I think on the basis of that, and because that macroeconomic policy framework and the kinds of policies that government have consistently implemented that are more in line with that, it does make one to make an argument that the political will is not there.
There's something else that she said, which is quite interesting. And she says that, government is erasing South Africa's history by changing some iconic dates. For example, the Sharpeville massacre to Human Rights Day. She says that this not only distorts history, but it also erases history for young people who need to know the history of the country for what it is. Would you agree with these sentiments?
I do not think that it necessarily erases history. Remember, by the way, the embracing of this date into now a South African history or to a South African public discourse, it essentially elevates these experiences. It elevates the actual so the Human Rights Day, because the fight of the people that were killed in 1961, it was a fight for the recognition of their rights. And so it's not necessarily that the expansion of this state into the overall South African site, into a South African identity, erases the history. But our inability to in terms of our education system, in terms of our historical curriculum, those then are the issues that then can be raised about what is the role of in our schools, in our curriculum, essentially continuing to teach the proper history of what are these struggles that people engaged in that essentially get to a South Africa that we enjoy today.
Dr. Bhengu, appreciate your time. Thank you so much for joining us here on the show. That was Dr. Sthembiso Bhengu with the Hani Institute, and he's the director there.